Today I will be looking at three different types of art depicting Jesus. The first representation will be a painting called the Head of Christ, also called the Salmon Head, which is a 1940 portrait painting of Jesus of Nazareth by American artist Warner Sallman. The painting is said to have become the basis for the visualization of Jesus for hundreds of millions of people. One of the main reasons for Salmon depicting Jesus in this way is primarily religious, not artistic. From the late 19th through early 20th century was the modernist fundamentalist controversy, where the influence of Darwinism and higher criticism wreaked havoc on the religious life of conservatives. This controversy created a climate where much of the religious influence of modernism came under scrutiny. This extended to the more effeminate depictions of Jesus, common to the Victorian era. Salmon claimed to have been encouraged by a Moody Bible Institute teacher around the time of World War I to stay an artist. The teacher encouraged Salmon to one day paint an image of Christ, saying, "I hope someday you give us your conception of Christ. Most of the pictures I have seen are too effeminate. I hope you'll picture virile, manly Christ." The theological conservative Salmon sought to create a virile, manly Christ, as his Bible teacher had suggested. But he did not do so without art historical awareness or the savvy he had learned during his years as a commercial artist. Most art historians agree that Salmon used the Leon Leonard painting, The Friend of the Humble, as the source for his Head of Christ. Art critics generally see it as pure kitsch. Among the most vociferous critics are clergy and professors who see in the naive, sentimental, and culturally backward faith in which they were raised and which an education helped them leave behind. Robert Paul Roth, a Lutheran and evangelical and New Testament scholar, wrote in a 1958 Christianity Today article entitled Christ and the Muses that Head of Christ is a pretty picture of a woman with a curling beard who has just come from the beauty parlor with a halo shampoo. Another man compared Salmon's Jesus to a Brett girl. Writer Alan DeVoe's criticism was much harsher. In the November 1948 issue of the American Mercury, DeVoe wrote that the portrait inaccurately portrays Jesus as the actoriously barbered, a pale and posturing person with a moderately long, silky hair, who clutched a kind of diaphanous drapery gracefully about him with an expression of simpering vivacity. He lamented that Sunday school teachers all over America were teaching little children to hold the limp and clammy hand of this sissified Jesus. On the other hand, respondents overwhelmingly stated that the picture appealed to them because it showed what Jesus looked like. Salmon was trying to go for the handsome, muscular, manly Christ, and that's what the picture has been criticized for looking like, so the critics are criticizing his intentions, even though Salmon himself doesn't believe he looked like that. He was just painting what his teacher suggested. I have to say, though, it's hard for me to connect to Salmon's Christ. The pretty boy image gets too much in the way for me, because it seems to ignore certain realities, like his skin color is white, even though he lived in the Middle East. There is no blemishes, dirt on his face, and his hair is silky smooth. It just looks too unreal for the context of Jesus. But I do like the painting mainly for the craftsmanship, lighting, texture, etc. Now the second representation of Jesus is called Piss Christ, which is a 1987 photograph by American artist and photographer Angus Serrano. It depicts a small plastic crucifix submerged in a glass of artist's urine. The only message is that I'm a Christian. The photographer Angus Serrano said that the only message is that I'm a Christian artist making a religious work of art based on my relationship with Christ and the Church. The crucifix is a symbol that has lost its true meaning, the horror of what occurred. It represents the crucifixion of a man who was tortured, humiliated, and left to die on a cross for several hours. In that time, Christ not only bled to death, he probably saw all his bodily functions and fluids come out of him. So if Piss Christ upsets people, maybe this is so because it is bringing the symbol closer to its original meaning. There was a time prior to the 17th century when the only art that mattered was religious art. After that, there were only a few contemporary art pieces that were considered both art and religious, and Piss Christ is one of them. This picture has sparked controversy, mainly because people think it is demeaning or showing hate towards Jesus, but in reality, it's the opposite. Many people did not like his representation of Jesus, and this is what they had to say. Shocking, abhorrent, and completely undeserving of any recognition whatsoever. Millions of taxpayers are rightfully incensed that their hard-earned dollars were used to honor and support Serrano's work. And also, Serrano is not an artist. He is a jerk. Lucy Lepard said, "It's a dark, beautiful, photographic image. The small wood and plastic crucifix becomes virtually monumental as it floats, photographically enlarged in a deep, rosy glow that is both ominous and glorious." I don't dislike this photo. I rather praise the artist for thinking of such a way to capture Jesus on the cross with the light cascading downwards onto his body. Once again, I enjoy it for its artistic value, and don't take any offense to Jesus in urine like this. Now, the third representation of Jesus is called Jesus the Homeless, which is a bronze sculpture by Canadian sculptor Timothy Schmalz that depicts Jesus as a homeless person sleeping on a park bench. His intention was inspired to create the piece after seeing a homeless person on the Beck Memorial on University Avenue in November 2012. The intention of the sculpture is to be a visual message of the most powerful idea of Christianity, that is, all human life is sacred, he said, to constantly remind us that the least of our brothers is sacred. Some people criticize this sculpture because homeless Jesus creeps them out or insults them. A blogger on the conservative site Whizbang discussed the actions of an Episcopal church in North Carolina that wasted $22,000 on a metal statue of a homeless Jesus to make a political statement instead of spending that money on, well, the homeless. My favorite criticism of homeless Jesus, though, comes from local resident Jerry Dawson in a letter to the editor of community site davidsonnews.net. Dawson writes, "My complaint is not about the art worthiness or the meaning behind the sculpture. It is about how people driving into our beautiful, reasonably upscale neighborhood and seeing an ugly homeless person sleeping on a park bench. Then there's some more cheerful news, such as the statue adds a touch of class to downtown, a hot dog bend in the park added, and it makes you want to be better. Respect God," one woman told the news site. "Hopefully it brings out the best in everybody, and we'll have a good Easter." My own interpretation of this is that I enjoy this piece of artwork. I can see the moral message behind this and why he made this sculpture for the public. I wouldn't mind seeing this in Melbourne. Now, upon reading of the criticism and positiveness towards each piece of artwork, none of what anybody else has said has made me change my mind on what I think about each piece. I still think all the artworks are to some degree nice, pleasing to eye representations of Jesus, and I don't dislike any of them. Everybody has a different view on art, and one person saying something that wouldn't change how you, yourself, sees art.